Live. All right, perfect.
Can I borrow the stand, please?
So I think we are now live.
Can I borrow the stand, please?
Why
Oh,
could I hear that?
I had to mute my computer because it was overlapping.
Uh,
All right. So what's up, everybody? How you guys doing?
Doing good, man. Good to see you, Mark. What's up?
Nothing.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, Mark's been punching away, basically working on eating food. That's been his main priority lately. He's
Main job.
yeah, garbage disposal, just shoveling with a shovel at this point.
Mark's like Roman. He has such high food needs.
Yeah. He can just put it down. Do you know who Roman Fritz is, Mark?
No.
It's a good analogy who she just compared you to. He's a Olympian bodybuilder, and this guy, I'm telling you, the amount of food he can put down is just it's like I've seen him do 2,000 gram carbs days, and just the guy's the most shredded person year round.
Year round.
Off season, his glutes are just peeled to the bone. It's quite interesting to say the least, for sure. But you're very similar. You're one who can just keep shoveling it down. Doesn't seem like we could put fat on you
No.
unless we transplanted it from somebody right onto you. So, Karina, you had a weird day.
Yeah, I don't know if we I don't know if it makes me sound terrible to like talk about this, but
That's all
it's
right.
um
None of us are perfect.
so I accidentally, pretty sure, took too much of my thyroid medication this morning.
Oh, really?
And this seems to be a pattern with me.
Yeah.
So like I wake up at like 3 in the morning, and like it's dark and I'm tired and I have to take my thyroid, 30 minutes before I drink coffee. So I'm like half asleep. And I'm pretty sure that I took so like usually I take a pill and I'll cut it in quarters because it's like dosed way too high. And
Right.
I'm pretty sure I took an entire pill this morning.
Yeah.
So I was like fine. And then like it was like probably an hour and a half later, I like looked down at I like start feeling weird and I looked down at my Apple Watch and my heart resting, it was like 110, which is like really high for like a resting heart rate for me. Um, and then just this entire day, my resting heart rate's been like 110. I've been like profusely sweating. I took a beta blocker and that helped a little bit bring it back down, but I tried to do legs today and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
It was not happening.
This seems to be a trend with you.
It's a trend with me. I'm gonna make some adjustments. So Mark, when we were at the Arnold, I had a, similar. I accidentally overdosed a different medication, um, and basically like put myself tachycardic.
Yikes.
It was
Yeah.
rough. I promise I'm responsible.
Well, it's funny as it worked out perfect. I happened to have Nebividol. I had some beta blocker on me. With I take I tend to take 5 milligrams because my resting heart rate stays a little bit high. And then if I add on top any little bit of stimulant, even caffeine or just something that's just running me a little hot throughout the day. So I'll take 5 milligrams of Nebividol. I happen to have it on me and just gave it to her and worked out perfect. I ended up bringing her down a little bit and getting her heart rate back into place. But you usually have the issue of your heart rate running too high or running too low.
Low, yeah.
Yeah.
I have really low blood pressure and really low resting heart rate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So usually not the issue, but thankfully I had some beta blockers on me today.
Yeah.
But it
Good.
was a rough day. I feel like I ran a marathon.
Shit. Hey, we've all been there. I've taken my morning supplements instead of my nighttime supplements and vice versa. And is not always perfect because my morning supplements, I'll have a little bit of stimulants in there, and the last thing you want to do is take that at night, and then you go ahead and you can't sleep. Have yohimbine or a little bit of caffeine or whatnot, and especially when you're on prep, the last thing you want to do is be brain dead and go ahead and take extra stimulants at the end of the night. It's to drive you crazy when you can't sleep in the first place.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. But nonetheless, I'm glad you guys got to jump on. I wanted to just kind of get you guys together. I haven't done a podcast here in my channel in like over a year, and I've been telling myself I want to do it. It's kind of a fun pastime. There's always something good to talk about in the bodybuilding world. And also wanted to have Mark on because he had a pretty cool video the other day we'll get into that I thought was interesting on cardiac health, on PED users, and just kind of a little bit of a background on cardiac health in general. And I've been telling Mark for a while these whiteboards that he puts together. Anyone that I'll put your information in the description, but Mark's whiteboards he does for education is excellent. A lot of the topics that you come up with and you kind of go over, and the one that he had done with cardiovascular health and PED users is interesting, and it's something that anyone can kind of understand, but you really get into it quite well and you do a good job of explaining it. And so it was I wanted to have you on and kind of go over that in a little bit, but the first thing I wanted to show you guys is talk about real quick was let me pull it up and see what you guys think of this. Is the Pittsburgh Pro is around the corner, and
I really want to go.
I think this is going to be the show of the year for sure. So let me see if I can you guys see my
Yep.
Instagram screen? Okay, cool. I have the biggest man crush on Nick Walker.
What?
And this was his update today. So he's sitting at 273, 3 weeks out of Pittsburgh. I already think this is close to stage ready at this point. I think a little water manipulation. He's already full as a house.
Yeah.
What do you guys?
This is already a much better look than New York.
Yeah. Well, New York, it seemed like his specialty is really kind of coming in crisp and clean with his conditioning.
Yeah.
And he wasn't 100% when he went up against Martin, I'd say, when it came to the conditioning realm in New York. But he's already, yeah, you're right, far improved. But I saw this and I was just like, I cannot wait to see you at 3 more weeks.
Oh, yeah. A little sharper, get some of that water off.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of softness here that'll come off in that final week. But man, he's not known for a tight waist, but it's like he magically gets it smaller and smaller. Yeah, this was something I saw this, and then these side shots. Yeah, beautiful. You big fan of? Do you keep up, Mark, with some of the pro ranks of the bodybuilding?
I try to, but no.
Not much.
No, not. You know what? It's kind of like with music. I like all kinds of songs. I have no idea who the artists. I'm like that with books. Also, I can read an entire book and forget the name of the author. It's pretty bad, but it's kind of how I watch bodybuilding. I have no idea the names of any of the athletes. So.
Well, it's like some people with like golf or fishing, they're really into the sport, but they don't know the professional fishermen or the professional golfers. It's really not their realm, but they love the process of it. And I can imagine that's probably more your background. But I wanted to show this because this is a guy that's been fighting his genetics from day one. He's never had the perfect structure, the perfect shape, and it's jaw dropping to me how somebody can just pretty much max out their frame when it comes to weight and muscularity, but continue to get better, which is probably the hardest thing in bodybuilding, in my opinion. But I don't know what you think, Karina, but this waist is just getting smaller and smaller, and it's exciting to see for sure.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where they place him against Derek and Martin. The three of them, I mean, they have very similar heights, right? And like it'll be really interesting to see because I think Martin and Derek both have those really nice, like full bubbly muscle bellies.
Yeah,
Um, and Nick's just massive. So it'll be interesting to see where the judges go. I'm a fan of Nick. Obviously, I like as like the freak factor. Like I love his physique, but I'm like a huge aesthetics person and
sure.
I have a hard time with his structure.
I'm trying to find. I don't think there's any quite.
Like that his flow is Martin's flow is just beautiful.
Yeah. What do you prefer, Mark, when you look at a physique and you kind of evaluate what catches your eye? Are you someone like me? I'm one of those guys that I gotta admit I love mass monsters. I love the old 90s bodybuilders in the early 2000s, just the bigger, the better, the freaks. Or are you more of like a flow and aesthetic, tight waist?
No, it's I think when I first really started to get interested in bodybuilding, it was, in the late 80s and early 90s. So, that's pretty much what my exposure is. So, I think things like, like Dorian Yates's back is something I think that just has to grab your attention, just things like that would be the thing that would catch my attention. That and conditioning. It wouldn't matter about anything else. I think it would be the athlete's conditioning because you could. That's to me that's a big indicator of somebody who has put the time and details in their training regime to come in, not just with full muscle bellies and not just with size, but, really has that dense, grainy muscularity and,
Yeah,
and they've worked really, really hard for that.
yeah, yeah. Especially when you see guys that have to fight their genetics. Like Martin definitely is blessed with that tiny waist and like having bubbly fashion, like just the bubbly muscle that just fills out and pops is not something everybody has, for sure. You look at guys like Samson Dowd, Mr. Olympia, and he couldn't get flat if he tried. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And they've seen him almost struggle with that to a point, trying to get leaner, and his body just fights against him. Um, but I see it right now as being kind of like, I think I don't. It's so hard to get a list of the competitors, but I know Martin. So we're looking at Martin. Nick Walker is another top guy, and then I know we got Bonac, Good Vito. Who am I missing? Crizzo.
Is Sass doing it?
Um, I'm not too sure. I think he had mentioned either New York possibly or Pittsburgh, but unfortunately, as much as I like Sass, I don't think he'll be. I think he'll be out of the top three, to be honest. Um, I see the top three being Nick Walker, Martin Fitzwater, and I know I'm missing a big name here.
Derek?
Oh, Derek. Yeah, duh.
I see the top three being Derek, Martin, and Nick.
Yeah. So I think Martin's probably going to be in the 240s on stage, where Nick Walker's about the same height and around 270 right now. But this flow, I just love. I agree with you. There's just something about Martin, how he's put together, so balanced and symmetrical. It's beautiful.
So
Um,
we've got Martin, Nick, Crizzo, Good Vito, Eric Wood, James. I didn't know James was doing Pittsburgh.
that's right. Yep, James.
Bonac and Derek.
Take a look
Forgot
at.
about Bonac. I'd forgotten about him.
Yeah, we just saw.
That is such a stacked lineup.
I
That's so
know.
excited.
It's really so you got easily three of the top five bodybuilders in the world right there competing in this show. Let's see. I think there's got to be something. I'm gonna find something here from. Well, I guess we can look at the Arnold. You and I were at the Arnold, and yeah, that conditioning was just kind of next level. That's kind of what pretty much I think won him the show, with being fully balanced in the lower half, and then having some crazy conditioning. Um, but there was some pictures. It's hard to find here. But look at this back.
Mhm.
Insane.
Insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be one hell of a competition, to be honest. I think, and I think it's probably worth taking a look at where James Holland's head's at right now too.
It'll be really interesting to see how James comes in at this show because I know that going into Detroit, he was not happy with the look and was trying really hard to fill out. And then he turned up at Saturday night finals, and I think he was a lot happier with that really bursting full look that he was able to bring. So, I know him and uh Stefan are still kind of figuring out his peak.
Yeah, that's the thing. He always looks better blasting full, but he doesn't show up blasting full very much. When we were at the Arnold, he was probably, I think, 15 pounds down compared to what he showed up at Detroit, from what I had heard. Um, let's see if we can find some pictures. There was a couple good ones of Derek that Chris Aceto had put up
Mm.
somewhere. Well, here's Sass too. I thought he looked fantastic at Detroit. And I thought he looked great at FIBO. I thought he should have won. I know I'm in the minority on that one, but I think excuse me, I think Andrew Jack's really got to start showing up in shape, like really just start blowing people away with some conditioning.
Yeah, I don't actually know if you're in the minority there. I saw a decent amount of people saying that he should have won. It was like what, a 1 point difference?
Yeah,
And he actually I think he was winning prejudge, right?
I think he won prejudging. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, look at this hamstring drop. It's beautiful. Great side shots, great conditioning. Yeah, really well put together. That'd be cool to see him again. I'd like to see him qualify. Um, I'm not going to look too hard here. I know that there were some pictures of Derek. Um, anyhow, let's take a quick look at James. I haven't seen him since Detroit. James. But could you imagine James though with his midsection truly put together? You know, if he had some abs that really just popped, they're just so shallow, but that's always been the one thing that's really kind of been disappointing.
Yeah. And it's such a shame because I know that he trains his abs like so much just trying to get them to pop.
Yeah. Well, from what I think he might have said it on Fuad's podcast, but he said that he was probably a little late to the game of training his abs. You know, early in his developmental stage, he didn't really put in the amount of work that he probably should have for the midsection. Some people are blessed with it. Some people genetically are just have great abs and they're blocky. Like look at Nick. I know Nick trains them quite a bit. Um, yeah, so this was right before the Arnold. You can see how much more sucked down he is for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a shallow midsection, and that's just always always been a detriment. But plenty of muscle,
Hmm.
great quad sweep from the back. I love this front lat spread. He doesn't have the hugest lats from the front, but it's just so nice with the shoulders and the size of his arms. Everything's so balanced. Yeah, he kind of reminds me of a little bit of Dorian look sometimes with the crazy body parts. But nonetheless, yeah, it's going to be an interesting show. I mean, it's hard to really tell who's going to win at this point. I think Jackie disagrees with me. We've been bickering back and forth the past few nights about this show, and I really think Nick's got something to prove. And if he shows up with his full potential, especially on the conditioning, we all know he has all the muscle in the world. And I think if he shows up with, perfect conditioning, a great peak, I could see him beating Derek. I could see him making Derek
Oh,
I could see him beating him and making him look smaller for sure. I mean, Derek's got some shape to him that's just ungodly, but there is an overpowering thing. You see guys with muscle that overpower guys with shape all the time.
I'm probably on Jackie's side here, but I think the really cool thing about Nick is the way that he really commands a stage when he walks out there, you know, like the second he walks on the stage, you're looking at him. And that's, I think, underappreciated thing about
Yeah.
bodybuilding. Your eyes are just drawn to him because he's freaking huge, but also he has the confidence. I mean, he poses with such confidence, and I don't care how many rounds they put him through, he does not move. He's the first one in the poses and the last one out, and he does not move.
Yeah. I see Jackie on the chat saying Team Martin.
Team Martin all day. No, it's gonna be Derek Martin, Nick. That's my predictions. Top three.
Derek Martin, Nick. Yeah.
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 Uh,
What do you think, Mark? You kind of thinking size can win this one with Nick that we showed you? Or are you more into the you think the shapely guys are starting to have their times coming to them?
I don't know. I think size is always gonna matter. Gonna matter the most.
Yeah. Well, size without conditioning is just not kind of acceptable in my book. So, um, you
yeah.
know, I think that's kind of a given. And you got people like Martin who have never had a problem getting in shape. Even when Jackie and I saw him like five years ago, I think his pro debut at Texas Pro, he was even in shape back then. Never seemed to have a issue with conditioning. You could see the potential for sure. So I think it's going to be the show of the year. But I'm going to put my money on Nick blowing surprising everybody.
Let's make a bet.
A bet. Oh
Let's do a
geez.
bet.
Oh geez. What's on the line?
I don't know. We gotta figure out what to bet.
Oh jeez. We'll have
I'm
to,
not eating any weird fish strumming, whatever the fuck they're doing over there.
yeah.
That's I will throw the fuck up.
Well, we can't put Mark in it because I know Mark doesn't follow it enough to have him place the bet. But let's see.
Jackie, think of something in the comments.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get back to that. We'll let Jackie figure out what's going to be on the line. I know she's chatting there in the
Jackie sent
comments.
me this amazing Terrarium Tales crew neck.
Yeah,
It's like everything I ever wanted.
she
And
got she got you that thing wicked quick. She
was
literally placed the order and it was there like the next day.
it was so fast.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So Mark, what's new with you, dude? How's training going? You know, how's
Good.
you're strumming along?
Yep.
You get bored in the off season like most of us too. I mean, it kind of is definitely a scenario where you can easily kind of get bored. It's just kind of tedious and monotonous, and I find myself having to kind of find ways to challenge myself.
Well, I like tedious and monotonous, so it, it's, I mean, I don't know. I don't find anything tedious and monotonous about it. I think, my favorite time of the day is in the gym. So it, you know, every time is something new, even if it's the same exercises over and over again.
Yeah.
So I don't really see it that way. I see it as, but at the same time, I've sort of always had that mindset. Like actually somebody asked me the other day, they were talking about, mass programs versus cut programs, and which I always find hysterical because, you run into somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'm really tired. And you're like, what are you so tired from? He's like, just started my cut. You're like, the fuck you cutting for? What, cutting what? And in the back of your head, you're probably thinking, I didn't even know this guy lifted weights, but I think we've even talked about it. I think, when it comes to that, you don't have to change your program so much, really. I think you really just need to change what you're eating, and make sure your conditioning is dialed in. But, I don't see that there really should be a huge difference. I mean, you might need to make some adjustments if, I'm like I wouldn't have to really make adjustments, but somebody who is, like maybe yourself, who, tries to get as much size as possible, in the off season. And then when you're getting ready for a show, you're restricted on calories, and that's, whether or not that's impacting your energy and the type of training you do. But yeah, that's so I don't see anything monotonous about it. I think I like the structure of all of it. So
Yeah, I'd say I agree. It's kind of funny how people do say like, there's different strategies for like rest and recovery and altering like your volume and frequency, but having like brand new programs and new training, new actual exercise selections just because you're going from a cutting scenario or like a prep into an off season improvement. I don't think that really always makes much sense either. Because I've been doing some of the same exercises and still making PRs on the same exercise,
yeah,
years and years down the road. So if there's still room to improve and it's what's gotten you there, I don't think you always have to make a change. So I'd agree with that. But having the idea of like changing up your frequency, changing up like what you're going to improve because you've changed food, you've changed like calories, like I now have enough food to actually make an improvement and I'm going to prioritize volume and recovery and rest periods and alter those things that are outside the gym. That makes a whole lot of sense to me for sure.
yeah.
What do you think, Karina? Is that you think some people got it wrong with always changing a new program or new exercises all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of progressive overload. I think that's kind of key when it comes to growing, for most people at least. And it's really hard to like measure progress when you're changing your program every 6 weeks or however, you know,
Yeah.
people are doing. And that's not even necessarily to say like you have to be like married to a logbook or something, but it's like I roughly know like how many tricep pull downs I'm doing, right? Or like
Right.
whatever, even if I'm not following a logbook. So I like to keep my training program pretty much the same, but I will rotate out like high fatigue movements during prep, just to like cortisol management, recovery. So things like bent rows, might sub those out for like something that's lower fatigue. Or
Yeah.
like for me, like glute bridges are incredibly high systemic fatigue, so I might like sub those out for like I don't know, Bulgarians or something, right? Stuff like that, but for the most part it's pretty much the same.
I,
You're
I think I think you have an opportunity to try different things too. Like in a prep scenario, you want to keep consistency to as many variables as possible. Because really the name of the game is just maintain. First of all, the athlete's job is to get lean and to
Mhm.
stay as recovered as possible, so they can just stay consistent. Um, that's not really a time to be trying different exercises, trying different intensity factors or different, doing drop sets one week and then doing straight sets the next week and doing, you know, um, widow makers the next. But in the off season, I think it's definitely an opportunity for you to try different things and see if something else works for you. I can't tell you how long it took me to truly find out how to grow my legs. As simple as it sounds, people think just, it's a matter of volume and frequency, and that's part of it, in food and rest, like I talked about before. But actually, that's when exercise selection and like, tempo and learning different things, trying different tactics, um, getting better at mind to muscle, is something I had to work on. And then I finally was able to find out that, like, hey, it was just a matter of me not training properly. Like, I was either going too heavy and allowing my glutes to overtake the movement rather than, my quads to really do the work or foot placement and whatnot. So, um, yeah, I think you make a good point, Mark, because you see it with people. I've had clients in the past, and different athletes come to me and say, well, what are we going to do this next training block? And it's like the same fucking thing.
The same thing.
Yeah, but better and more improved. And then when you think that it's a matter of stacking more weight, it's actually doing things more efficiently. So give you an example, I'll see people in the off season, they're progressing their weight very quickly. So they might get let's just say a dumbbell press and they go from 70 to 80 to 90. And then, 16 weeks later, they've doubled their pressing weight. I have to look at them and say, are you cheating? Like, are you cheating your form? Are you cheating your tempo? Are you bouncing the weight off? Like, so we only progress when things are perfect, when there's no other variable that we can improve on, and we're out of our rep range, or we've maxed out a rep range, which is how I like to train people, kind of work within a rep range and then pick your weight, so your weight's dictated by how many reps I'm asking you to do, not just how much you can lift a couple of times. So, yeah, it's a good point. And I think a lot of people, yeah, always look for like, that's the new trick. Like what's the trick is really consistency, and it's always going to be that way. You know, Mark could tell you better than anyone else. I mean, Mark's been doing this longer than all of us, and his improvements have come from a matter of consistency and a lot of mistakes and a lot of positives.
Well, plus, my own physical training has, depending on what was going on in my career, sort of dictated, what my physical needs really needed to be. So, and having to be places where there is no equipment, or there is no gym, and you're really trying to just make do with what you have. And for a while I had jumped on, I was on when CrossFit was sort of invented, I was, doing that whole nonsense. And then it was really popular in the military and law enforcement community. And then once it got popular with people, I stopped doing it because it was too much, but but even in the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years or so, like I decided that I was going to start like doing ruck marathons. So, when you're training for a marathon with weight on your back, it's kind of tough to stay consistent in the gym. You end up prioritizing the marathon training and not the weight training. And, that's like a whole other thing. And then, but yeah, I think, consistency is always going to be one of the top keys in that. And I think a lot of things that were popularized over the last couple of decades is probably just nonsense, used to sell magazines and whatnot. Things like muscle confusion. Muscles don't get confused. That's
Yeah.
I think there's even I'd go so far as to even challenge the whole idea about, mind muscle connection. I think that, there is one, that it's part of the nervous system, but, and I think even Arnold used to say things like he would, imagine something really strongly, and then suddenly he was able to, develop this connection between his mind and his bicep, or whatever it is he was training. But I think that what really that mind muscle connection is you found the weight that you could control the best through a full range of motion, keep tension on the muscle, and run it till it's fatigued. That's what I think the actual connection is. It's like that. And what's the other one? Muscle memory. Like our muscles have memory. That's probably a little true. I think there's something to do with that. You can, I think if you like take a hiatus from training, I think you could probably go like 10 days or 2 weeks before you start, losing some muscle mass. And I think your body will probably just pick that up once you start training again.
Yeah. Well, we see that a lot. I've seen that. That's got some truth to it, where people's muscles they've just kind of gotten out of the training and they bounce back really quick,
Yeah.
because call it muscle memory, or just call it like recognizing and coming back to the adaptation of training and getting used to food coming back in. I mean, you see with guys like Crizzo's a good one, right? He just got injured, deflated to nothing, and now he's looking like an absolute top 10 bodybuilder in the world. So call it muscle memory or whatnot, but yeah, muscle confusion is a load of crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, your body doesn't forget. Your brain doesn't allow you to forget how to contract a muscle
Right.
and confuse it. It doesn't go, oh, I'm
Yeah.
trying to do a curl, but I thought we were going to be playing with triceps today. It doesn't work that way.
But
No idea.
like what you were saying earlier about, like you have a trainee that, has these, 10-pound incremental jumps in their presses over X number of weeks. Um, I bet if you went and watched him that, his range of motion has decreased significantly, and you can see that. I mean, just look around any gym at any time. You've got somebody, doing like every rep they do is a partial rep,
Yeah.
without them saying I'm doing forced partials. That's it. That's the only rep that they're doing. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes like when you force people to like slow down and kind of explain the terms that they're using, like what is it that you actually think is happening when you say muscle confusion? And like if you actually ask, like, do you really think that your bicep knows the difference, somehow has a brain and knows the difference between a concentration curl and a preacher curl? Or like what are we talking about here?
Right. Right. No, totally true. Well, what it does is it sells programs. I remember Muscle Confusion was big with, I think it was P90X, that was their big shtick, was
yeah.
Muscle Confusion. And what they did is they had 5 or 6 good training programs that they just pretty much jumbled and pulled out of a hat and put it on a calendar and said, "There's your Muscle Confusion." You know, but
Well, that was Greg Glassman's whole premise, behind CrossFit, but like a whole different delivery system, with the workout of the day. It's like, oh, one day I'm running 5 miles, and the next day, I'm doing 5,000 calf raises and clean and jerks,
right,
but 3 sets of three, and you know and then people who follow that, then there comes all these variations, P90X, you can see them in the gyms on like those turf areas. They're just doing like these cross shitty exercises. They're just doing some made up circuit, faster and faster to sweat puddles, and that's the workout. I don't know how you can measure any consistency or progress with that.
No. No,
so
people measure output by, like you said, sweat, and then like, I mean, soreness is a good indicator, but like, if you're doing a novel movement, you're gonna get sore, right? And so it's like people think that like there's like a direct relationship between soreness and growth, and there's not.
yeah, I'd say that maybe it's a soreness is helping you kind of understand if you're targeting the muscle. Obviously, like you can kind of, sometimes you think you're hitting abductors, but you're really kind of firing on the glutes or something, and you don't really notice it till later on, possibly. But yeah, you make a good point. I wanted to mention we got a couple people in the chat here. Um, I think it was Jackie mentioned that. Let's see, where was it? Everybody, bear with me. It's my first live I've done in a long time. But I think Jackie said for the bet, whoever loses the bet needs to either twerk in front of a parked Tesla's camera. I think that's a pretty good one. We need to
That's a
twerk.
great one.
Yeah,
That
Jack.
video of Jackie flipping off the Tesla is so good.
I know. Mark, when we were in DC, Jackie figured out that Teslas have cameras, and when you get too close to them, they start recording. So she started flicking, going up to every Tesla and flicking them off and giving them a wave. That was her thing. I'd say that's a good one. I'll give a good twerk. I know how to twerk it and work it.
All right, grip it and rip it and torque it and work it.
We got Forgotten Friend, our buddy from the Arnold. He's saying Nick Derek Martin. We got someone on my team here.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And we got Zach, our buddy Zach, in the chat. I don't think Zach gave us a prediction, but Zach, if you got a prediction, I need to hear what you're thinking for the Pittsburgh Pro. So
All right, so you've got Nick, Derek, Martin. Is that the order you're going?
I'd have to say Nick, Derek, Martin.
All right.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's
I've
hard
got
to
Derek, Martin, Nick. So
Derek, Martin, and Nick.
I want Martin to beat Nick so bad.
It depends because like if they are immediately looking for a size game, Nick's going to go right to the front of the line. I'd
Yeah.
imagine if conditions optimal amongst everybody.
Yeah.
But if they just start comparing Martin and Derek, Nick's going to be a third place, stepped off to the side. I'd imagine so.
It'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, got a couple Team Martins all day.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
So we got forgotten friend. Muscle confusion is real. Sometimes I go to do a deadlift and my muscle gets confused on how to push it back up. Yeah.
Almost.
So Zach's pick here. Nick, Derek, and Martin. All right. So same here. Yeah. Jackie's got the same as Karina for her picks. All right, so I'm going to lock it in. I'm going to say Nick, Derek, Martin. Okay. Now we got to get the winner. Do we get to pick the winner?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah, I'll do that. So deal.
All right.
Twerk it and work it.
We're gonna work it.
Twerk and work it. So you got Derek. Derek, you said, right?
Derek. Yep.
Again, Nick. All right. All right. We'll have to leave my card on the Tesla so they can email me the twerking video. Please send us this video. Yeah. Forgotten Friend says Nick is a effing cartoon character. He's kind of like Babe Ruth. He either strikes out or hits home runs. I'd say I kind of agree with that, but we've only seen Nick off once, and I'd say that was New York Pro last year. Nick's been a pretty consistent bodybuilder.
Consistently, like ridiculously conditioned.
Yeah. I mean, he's been kind of, but I wonder who's to blame for that. If that was him, or if that was with Matt Jansen kind of dropping the ball with his coach or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Nick had a lot going on that year too in his personal life that he's, spoken about.
Yeah.
So it might have been a common. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a relationship, so it's always, at least both parties have a little bit of.
No, let me ask you this though. Do you see Nick, if Nick's at his best, do you see him being a top 5 Olympian anyhow
Yeah.
in this lineup? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Some of these guys are really starting to get very comparable, and it's kind of like the tables have turned though. It's kind of like the judging has almost gone towards the pretty aesthetic guys, and even the biggest bodybuilder, Mr. Olympia Samson Dowda, happens to be an aesthetic, beautiful physique. He's kind of got the whole package. The only thing that's held him back is really just jaw-dropping conditioning.
Yeah.
The second he gets his conditioning locked in where he can compare to even something like Sasan, someone like Derek, like a Bonax kind of conditioning, if he ever gets that, I think it's going to be who's second place for a long, long time.
I'm curious if he can get that level of conditioning.
Right. Well, that's a good point. Yeah. What do you think that is? I mean, is it just a matter of his genetics? I mean, he is just water scenario, or
some of it's genetics and some of it is, I mean, I guess this is genetics, and I don't know, maybe whatever. Like Terrence has actually talked about this too, is like Black people have thicker skin, like because of the melanin in it. It is it's rare that you see that, like the level of conditioning of like really grainy look that like Nick gets. And so it's like, I think even at peak conditioning, like if you stand up next to someone like Nick that literally is like sandpaper skin, like there's just going to be a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing wrong with mentioning that, because honestly, different ethnicities do have some of these characteristics that you see, and it does seem like some of these Black dudes have the rounder look. And you even get guys joke about it, like James Hollinshead used to joke about being Caucasian dry.
Yeah.
just saying the Caucasian dry is definitely a certain thing. And yeah, so I think that's something he's always going to have to fight, but I still think he has
Oh, for sure. I think
more to
so.
give in conditioning. But it's not a matter of suffering because we all see his diet. I follow him on YouTube. I mean, I don't know if you've ever you know who Samson Dowda is, Mark?
Oh yeah.
Kurt Mr. Olympia.
Yep.
So you're talking like a 300-pound guy on stage, 5'11", maybe 6 foot or whatever, and that's someone you see in person, and it's just freaky. I mean, I was 30, 40 rows from him at the Arnold, and I just couldn't believe the detail I could see from that far away with him. But his diet, they're showing his prep, and his diet, his breakfast is 3 whole eggs, and it's just like
Literally. Like,
that's it.
it's less than I eat for breakfast during prep. That's wild.
Yeah,
300 pounds.
yeah.
It's huge. He hugged me at the Detroit Pro and I felt like I was being swallowed by a bear. I mean, it's like I'm a tiny person anyway, and I'm like, I'm a small child in this man's arms.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark? Is there definitely something with different ethnicities have a different kind of characteristics in bodybuilding? Because you kind of see it come to front in bodybuilding. Like,
Yeah, I think so. I think especially if you're looking at athletes from like Southwest Asia, if they're from India or if they're from Iran, those guys seem to have an entirely different look. And so it must be. And I agree with what Karina's saying. I think if especially, and I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between, black athletes from Africa and black athletes from the United States.
mm,
You know, and a lot of that probably has to do with the genetics behind their skin. So
yeah, everybody's telling me to put the comments up on the screen, but I don't know how to do that.
I can't see the comments. I don't know how to.
Yeah,
I guess I could log in on my phone to the.
let me see. And one thing you see too is some of the Asian dudes, the quads and the leg development just seems to be like come standard with
mhm.
them. It's something else. Um, yeah, sorry everybody. Dave will get better at this part, and we'll get comments on the screen for the next one for sure. Um, but let's see what else we got for comments in here. I want to just get some people included because it's pretty cool. Sean Clarita and Keon are the freakiest people that I've seen in person. Yeah, definitely the most bubbliest. I'm seeing Sean Clarita, the guy that comes up to here on me, but the most bubbliest, freakiest mutant 3D thing I've ever seen. It's interesting for sure. Um,
Yeah, Kian is just most insane genetics in the IFBB.
yeah, absolutely.
It is crazy. Who's your favorite physique? Like across any division? Um,
Me?
yeah.
Oh, there's a lot of good ones. I mean, if I had to say current, I'd actually probably say Keon.
Mm.
It's just he has every tool possible to him, and it's amazing to see how he puts everything together. And he was another one that conditioning was just like his one thing he needed to improve on to be top five competitor, and he went from I think ninth place to fifth place to winning the 212, and yeah, he's definitely someone I'd say if I could pick someone's physique to look like, it would be him. But then the funny thing is, my second favorite guy is Nick Walker, who's completely opposite.
Really
Who's
different.
a mutant freak. Um,
What about you, Mark?
I don't have anything to say.
you don't got
Terrence,
any
Terrence
current?
Ruffin is my favorite.
You like? Yeah, he's
I love Terrence's physique. It is beautiful.
yeah, and he's really improved um,
Yeah.
this year for sure.
Yeah, it's the best he's ever looked for sure.
All right, I'm gonna stop dicking around trying to get these comments up. But nonetheless, Jackie says Lola is her favorite for figure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That girl is a mutant. Paul, but I mean,
About that. Yeah.
Mark, if you had to pick though, like of all time, like if there, I mean, there's a million guys of all time. You know, if you had to be someone's physique, who you going with? Or maybe who's the most impressive, I guess, to you?
I'm gonna say Frank Zane.
Hell yeah.
That's a
Because,
very good one.
because I think probably because, he I think aesthetically, and I think his aesthetics and his size just match. Everything matches with him, and,
Yeah.
and I think that's why. Because I don't think there's any lost details in any of his musculature. He's not mutant big where you're like, you know what, that guy's he's just too big, and
Right.
and all of those important parts, like the ratio between his delts and his quads and his waist, I think is all just spot on. So
Yeah.
Frank Zane.
Yeah. And he was one of the first guys that really started getting conditioning,
Yeah.
um, to really be kind of a big part. And then you had Lee Labrada, and Gaspari after that, that really kind of showed what, shredded glutes are.
Well, Frank was one of those guys that was advocated even things like jogging and riding his bike around and things like that. That I think is kind of unheard of now. I mean, unless are you going jogging anytime soon, or no, of course not. But you know,
I'll pull something.
you know,
If I go jogging. I would want to look like Sid Gillen though.
Sid,
If
yeah.
I could look like anyone, that's the physique I would want.
You got another guy, forgotten friend here says Paul Dillette. That was another freak. That's for sure.
but I think one of the biggest things that's changed in the sport isn't men's bodybuilding, it's women's bodybuilding. You know, and every and end of every type. I mean, look at athletes, back in the 70s and 80s. Like look at Bev Francis and Corey Everson and
Mhm.
Addis Portuguese and Rachel McLish. I don't even know what they would do now, like in 2025, like what category they would compete in, because I don't think there's like absolutely no comparison.
Some of the best genetics are in the females,
Yeah.
in this sport. I'll tell you that much. Um, Nonetheless, we got so before I don't want to keep you guys on too long, but I did want to get your opinion on the Pittsburgh Pro. Um, but Mark, I did want to get a second to talk about. I thought you came out with a really cool video on your channel. Um,
You
no,
know,
you're good.
I thought it looked like, I'll be honest, I thought it looked like garbage. And it, when I first tried to shoot it, I did it I put it on Instagram, and that looked mental. So I took that down. And then, um, it, when I teach at work, I don't stand there. I walk around the room as I teach. And, you've seen the boards I use, and it's when I'm teaching veterans, with for mostly, and it's primarily focused on men's health and everything surrounding that. And I take it with the idea that nobody in the room knows anything about anything, even if they do. Because I think the diversity that I have is pretty wide. So I want to make sure all of the information is very easily understandable, and and pretty much probably how I did this whiteboard is pretty similar to how I would do one of those classes,
Right.
aside from the not walking around part. And and the information is, the science behind it is all, college level and even graduate school level, information. So it's not like super basic. Some of it's actually really complex, but it's the idea of taking the complexity and making it very easy to understand.
Yeah, which you do a good job of. I mean, it's funny you were if you've ever watched The Office, Jackie and I are a big fan of The Office, and I love how Michael, the boss there, he'll always say to somebody, "Can you explain it? Can you explain that to me like I'm 12 years old?" And if he doesn't understand it, he goes, "Okay, can you explain it to me like I'm 11?" And he just keeps going
Keeps
until
going down.
you understand it. And um, but that's what you do. You literally put things in a way where if you're not familiar with the subject, you at least give me a good background of what you're talking about and what point you're trying to get across. And I want to just share your channel real quick, so I'll show everybody. And I got a few questions um, as well. So let's see.
Fuck.
Mac in his
Love
50s.
that.
So if you guys aren't following Mark,
You know,
check him out on his YouTube. But its name is at Mark in his 50s.
At Mock.
Yeah. And
I,
then on
my
Instagram.
phone, that's how it's spelled. It's none of my kids sound like me. They all sound like Wendy.
But I want to show this too. So Mark Arena. So on Instagram, everybody give him a follow. I'm telling you, Mark does a great job with not only just being entertaining, but also giving some pretty quick, easy, digestible information that's pretty cool. But mark.arena.12 on Instagram is his page. But this is what I was talking about. Mark does these whiteboards. And anyone that doesn't know a little bit of Mark's background, he works with, and correct me if I'm wrong when I'm explaining this, but Mark works with homeless veterans in a homeless veteran shelter,
Yep.
and also does some educating with them periodically with these whiteboards. And you'll pick a subject and just kind of break it down so it's, again, easily digestible. And this one here, like talking about suicide and suicide prevention. And sometimes, again, like I know you just did this one on high blood pressure, and you did one on the cardiovascular risks as well. But I had a few questions for you, so
Sure.
let me back out of this. But yeah, anybody check him out. It's Mark's going to keep putting up these whiteboards, which I've been telling him forever, and you'll get better. You just got to keep doing them. So don't be so tough on yourself, brother. But one thing that popped off to me, so I look at trying to give people, when I educate some people on different topics about covering their health, I always try to at least finish by giving them a checklist of simple, like baseline, bottom of the barrel, no cost things that they can do to kind of check for these issues. And so that's part of my question to you is if you get a person that doesn't have a lot of money, that can't always go check their blood work all the time, or they have to, or that's not an option, they have to rely on what their doctor can do, or maybe they're uninsured and they're really just kind of going in this blank, but they have a love for training and bodybuilding, and maybe they are or aren't using PEDs, but there is even in athletes' hearts, left ventricular hypertrophy is an issue, whether PED use is involved or not. So what is, like, if you could give people like maybe say 2, 3, however many things of a checklist of saying these are things that you can monitor, these are things you can probably do about it, this is what to be aware of.
Yeah. I think the number one thing that comes to mind would probably be, blood pressure readings. I think is a big deal, and you can go on Amazon and for a couple of bucks you can get a home blood pressure monitor, and the pamphlet will even tell you what the range is that's acceptable, and I think that's the biggest one because again, if whether the athlete's using PEDs or not, when they're lifting weights or you're bodybuilding, we all those effects that we put our body under, there's a whole stress process, and that in of itself is enough to cause structural damage and inflammation to our blood vessels. And over time, that's going to contribute to higher blood pressure readings because, on the outside, we look awesome. You're muscular and vascular, and you might be flexible, and you have no idea that your blood vessels have stiffened up, and they're in vasospasm, and your systolic blood pressure is high. So that would be the first thing I think I would check, that and resting heart rates, and doing the simple calculation of, what is it, 220 minus your age to come up with your maximal heart rate, and then just do the percentage math to kind of see where you should be, for, especially during, your cardiovascular training. Because, if you could stay within your target heart rate, then that whether at rest or under stress, your heart rate is in an acceptable range, and at the same time, it should have a relatively short period of recovery. So if it's 110 or 120 under stress, and then you remove the stress and rest for a little bit, and it comes back down to say 70 or 80 or 60, then relatively quickly, and you're not dizzy and falling down, well, we can make a safe assumption that a lot of things are functioning okay. Like your rate control of your heart is good, your baroreceptors and your carotid arteries are functioning properly because you're not falling down. And then, if they wake up in the morning and check their blood pressure and do it consistently over time, it's a good indicator as to whether or not you're hypertensive or not. So those would be the first two things. And then the third thing would be buying a very, very inexpensive home glucometer, and measuring blood sugar. And I think that's really important too, because as I mean, it's the popularity of using insulin, along with, performance enhancing things like, IGF-1 or growth hormone, or, anabolic and androgenic agents. We're looking at things that are going to, conceivably drive blood sugar up, that in a carb-rich diet. And once we start using, insulin and GLP-1 drugs and things like that, we can assume now our body is unable to manage that glucose load on its own. We've overtaxed the pancreas. Our insulin output might not be great, and our glucose uptake might not be wonderful. So that process in of itself, again, causes havoc over the entire vascular system, and contributes to high blood pressure itself. It contributes directly to kidney disease and kidney failure. And so whether you have to use endogenous agents to control the blood sugar or you don't, it's important to get a good idea of where you sit. So you should be, at no time you be below 70 and over 110. I think is fair to say.
In a rested state.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Karina,
you got a pretty good, from your own experience with cardiovascular health and kind of resting heart rate. Is there something we're kind of missing there that's overlooked easily? Because obviously heart health is something that's, like Mark's made, very clear, which we all kind of know, for bodybuilders is pretty much our number one killer.
Yeah, pretty much exactly what Mark said is exactly what I would say. Check your blood pressure, check your blood glucose consistently. And for blood pressure, like, check it first thing in the morning after you've been sitting still for a couple minutes. When you go to the doctor's office, they rush you in immediately. They don't care that you just walked in, that you have your legs. They do not give a shit. And so, I don't even go off of those readings. First thing in the morning, just consistently. Same thing with blood glucose. Some people get dawn effect in the morning, just the cortisol spike. Some people are really dehydrated in the morning. And so sometimes, if your fasted is trending high, I'll also have like postprandial readings, or like right before your next meal where you should have been like in a somewhat fasted state for like 3 hours at that point. So we can get those. But those are the two metrics that I tend to prioritize pretty much above everything. And then keeping some form of cardio in year round for bodybuilders is pretty critical.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think one thing that's not really thought of, and some people kind of don't consider doing, is actually having a real baseline reading. Like, so give you an example, like for myself, a competitive bodybuilder, I'd have to eliminate, compounds I'm on, extreme food intake, and maybe just like kind of getting myself to a spot of like maybe like a cruise period to actually find my baseline. Like, what is my resting heart rate? What is my blood pressure when other factors aren't involved as well? Because all those things kind of compile and add to the issue. I just did a video last night that I'm going to put out on, which I thought was worth talking about, which was elevated heart rate in GLP-1 agonists. The fact that people use them and we get a raised metabolic rate causing a raised heart rate, and to what jump from your baseline to introducing that peptide is worth paying attention to. And but if you don't have a baseline, like if you don't actually have like it goes along with like hormonal things too. Like if we want to know what's my actual testosterone levels, I kind of have to get off gear and I have to get off my testosterone. I have to stop messing around with certain things and get my body back to a homeostatic spot so I can actually test that baseline. So I think that goes along with the heart too, so you got to consider too, like if you're in a prep scenario and you're running an ECY stack and you got ephedrine and you got clenbuterol and T3 raising your metabolic rate, all of these things in place, you're not really getting a good baseline to understand like how am I without all these compounds in play as well. So having some starting point, it's kind of like if we all could look back and go back in time. I wish I had done my blood work before I even started doing anything, to really know what I am in a healthy state before I start messing with my own health or baseline as well. So I think that's something to consider. And but yeah, that's a good point, Mark, because those are maybe a couple small purchases that you get done and you have these tools at your disposal right off the bat. One other thing I was going to ask you, and then we'll jump off so we don't go on forever. But you did mention in your video about you brought up about kind of calcium scores, and that it might be kind of too, if you're looking at your calcium score or you're looking at like what was it, your calcium like CAT scan, I guess you'd say,
Yep.
you're probably looking too late into these factors. And I kind of want to know your reasoning behind that, because some bodybuilders do look into their calcium score and find out the amount of calcium they have, and if they're at risk of like too much buildup, which could cause a blockage or
Well,
whatnot. But why, I guess my question is why would it be too late
well,
to check that?
well, I'm addressing that from the idea that if you're already finding calcium plaquing, then it's too late. So, it's I don't really think that it's an incredibly useful tool as a health maintenance tool. I think that's kind of sketchy and dangerous. It's if we're that worried about having coronary plaquing with fat and calcium plaques, the damage is already there. It's not something like you're not gonna change your diet or change your gear protocol and that's going to suddenly reverse itself. That's not going to happen. The damage is already done. So it's that, it might be, while it might be a good idea very early on to know and say, oh, look, I don't have any problems. But that's a pretty costly test,
Yeah.
try to convince your physician to say, hey, can I get a calcium ion CAT scan or let alone just a CAT scan of the chest alone. And then if it's being done later on, the athlete is symptomatic and they undergo that test, and you're like, oh, okay, now what do you do? Do you quit the sport, or do you just treat it medically? That's the whole thing, and the idea of that presentation has more to do with not so much like the athletes who either pro athletes or say, the group of us, we're having this conversation, and we possess, a degree of knowledge that perhaps somebody else doesn't possess. And we all know that, there's plenty of people out there who are just willy-nilly doing gear because, kind of like remember Mickey Rourke and The Wrestler? Did you see that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Mickey wanted to make a comeback, so he hooked up with the ugliest guy he could find in the locker room, who handed him a brown paper bag. Who the fuck knows what was in that bag? But Mickey started shooting it up in his ass, and then suddenly he was drinking protein shakes and doing seated curls. And then what happened? He had a fucking heart attack. So so that's the message right there. And I think that we as coaches and trainers and gym friends and educators have this, especially if somebody's paying you, right? We have this duty to give them that disclaimer and that word of warning, particularly if we're not physicians. That's a whole other thing. If you've got a physician on your team, well, you've got a golden ticket. And you could get those things managed. And, but if we just have, a beginning athlete, who's young, we've already, we can't just make assumptions that the athletes in their 30s or fourth or fifth or sixth decades. We're seeing 20-year-olds right now whose endogenous hormone levels have already tanked, because before they started doing real gear, they were doing SARMs and SERMs, which is a whole other topic, because, the fact that they're, research, chemicals, that's the problem with that is because none of them have made it beyond like the second stage of of research.
Yeah.
So,
and the ones that have are deemed kind of not usable.
Well,
not beneficial anyhow.
Not usable, or the side effects have been so great that the physical detriment, exceeds anything else. And then, we're seeing the very same negative impacts from things that people would assume are relatively harmless, because you could just buy it yourself, perfectly legally from a compounding place, and say, I'm going to do this, and you'll get some of the very same effects as you would. You'd be much better off just doing gear.
Yeah. I think trying to be a little proactive so you don't get to the point, like you're saying, where you look at your calcium score and it's too late, or it's in a really danger zone.
Right.
And really the only thing you can do is really, I think, starts with lifestyle, where diet's in line with, correct fat intake, cardiovascular health, and the output that you're able to get your heart. Vitamin K2 can help break down calcium buildup to an extent. So being proactive, or even if you're lucky enough to catch a trend and get a few readings so you can see where your calcium buildup over time goes and at what rate, that's kind of great, but that's not always realistic. So
no, but I think that's why if you did, and we could say, even if you did, like I think I said in the video, and you had mentioned those companies that, you could do your own lab work. And I think I included the links later on. That's a great idea. You'll have to pay out of pocket, but you could get your own baseline, and you could do it real inexpensively. Just do a couple of liver enzymes and a GGT, and maybe some inflammatory markers to get an idea of where you're at. And if you're within a normal range, then your system is probably working pretty effectively.
So, you got anything to add to that, Karina?
Yeah, just on the topic of like being proactive, I would add to that draw fasted insulin. Because if your fasted glucose is elevated, that's actually the second. You're already down, like the partially down the path towards
Right.
either prediabetes or insulin resistance or whatever. Because what will actually happen is you'll see the fasted insulin start to rise first to try to bring down and that's actually bringing the blood glucose levels down. So you might have a perfectly normal, fasted glucose, but your fasted insulin sky high. And then once your pancreas starts to kind of shit out, then you'll see the fasted insulin or the fasted glucose start
Glucose
rising.
raise. Yeah.
So that's a really cheap test. You can order it yourself. It's like $20. But I would add that to the list that Mark just gave.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that just about as beneficial as, more beneficial than fasted glucose readings, because you're actually seeing what's happening, how your body's reacting as well. So, and then it kind of gives you a little idea of probably one of the quickest ways to find out insulin sensitivity is, the output and how much you're actually bringing your glucose down to a point. So, yeah, no, I thought it was a great video, Mark. You really, everybody that wants to get a little idea of just kind of what's going on with your heart from beginning towards end with, a rough idea of that as a competitive bodybuilder, I would check that out. It was definitely a good one. And I encourage you to just keep making those whiteboards, dude. You do a great job for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. But before you hop off, anything else? Anybody got anything exciting going on? Any Easter plans that are worth noting?
I went and shot a couple of new guns today. That was kind of cool. So,
You did?
Yeah.
Where you go to a range somewhere local or what?
Yeah, there's a range in Boylston that I used to be a member of, and then life got really, really busy, and I just stopped going. So I stopped paying for my membership, and then the whole process of having to go to the range to shoot is ends up being like a huge chunk of time out of your day. And even if it's something that I really like to do, my priorities are going to the gym and eating. So so getting some time to go and I only shot like 50 rounds between the two guns, but it was just so I could get some trigger time in.
Good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's real. I'm sure that's a little relaxing for you too, kind of practicing your marksmanship. And
Yep.
I'm sure you weren't shooting a Red Ryder BB gun. I'm sure it was something a little more bang to it.
It was not.
Good. Well, all right. Well, we'll hop off. But everybody that was jumping in the chat, I appreciate the support, and hopefully we can do, more of these. Get some of our friends together, talk about some of these. I think it's kind of cool to learn from everybody's kind of strength to a point. Mark's someone I've learned a lot from since the past handful of years. We've gotten to know each other, and I really consider you two some of the smartest people I truly know. And when I don't have an answer for something, I do rely on both of you, and you always seem to have something to contribute to me, or at least point me in the right direction. And I think I shouldn't be the only one to kind of benefit from that. I think we can share a little bit and have a little fun and do some twerking in front of Teslas and go from there. So,
oh yeah.
So, but the bet is on, Karina.
It's on.
All right.
This was awesome. Mark, it was so good to see you.
The winner is going to be Nick Walker, so it's
all right.
We'll see. I'm getting my business card ready so I can leave it on the Tesla though. I have a feeling I might lose this one, but I think it's if Nick's gonna win, I think it's gonna be a win big. I think for
that
sure.
would be insane. I'd be happy just for the upset. That would be an Arnold upset and a Pittsburgh upset. The Olympia would be insane. It would be insane.
Yeah.
It would be crazy.
It'd be hard predicting the next one after that for sure.
Heck
But
yeah.
all right, everybody, appreciate you guys watching. Until the next time.